I'm very happy that today I could make it, and all of you, because today I think it's going to be very interesting and, well, I think meaningful, but also very important subject we're going to talk about. My name is Monique Knapen, and I am the chair of the VNC, that's the Vereniging Nederland-China. It's an association of Netherlands-China, and it already exists for quite some time, next year already 50 years. And its aim is really to bring China closer, to inform about China's developments, not only in business, but also in culture and also in science and education. And we try to do that with events like this, but we also have our own publication, so we have put all the flyers, of course, here to make some extra promotion. So if you're not a member yet, consider to come. And we try really to really inform Dutch people a little bit better about, or a little bit more complete about China, and we can have discussions. That doesn't matter, but I think it's important, and it's good to talk to each other. We also do that for Chinese members, because we also try to bring some Dutch elements, some Dutch parties sometimes, like Sinterklaas, and we even have a hiring party, especially for Chinese people, so it's also a gezelligheid thing. So always important to have drinks afterwards and everything. But today it's something else, it's the China Cafe that's already existing since 2007, and we're very happy that Cindy Schouw, is in Eindhoven our host. We have also one in Utrecht, that's every quarter. We have one in June again, but we had one in November here about Xperia. That's also a very serious subject. But today it's a little bit less sensitive maybe, but not in the least important. It's about robotics. So I give the floor to Cindy.
The bomb.
And the bomb, yeah. The bomb made it happen today because, as I said, we are an association that has members, but we are a non-profit, so we don't have so much money, and it's always important to have partners like BOM. And that's just Daniel, where is he? Yeah, so Daniel's here, but also Danny from BOM. So it's important to have people that are supporting us and also see the need and the importance of this subject. So thank you, BOM, for helping us out. Very welcome.
They will come back at the end of the session.
Yeah, and in the end, there will be a little talk from you. So it's, and I will be back soon too. But Cindy, first to you. Cindy Schouw, I think you're a very active VNC member, but also a business lady, working now for a new company, I think. But so I'm very happy that you still have time to introduce to us the speakers of today and also moderate the discussion. Thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you, Monique.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I would like to first introduce our two speakers. First is Jos Elfrink. Jos earned his PhD in robotics in 2014 from the Department of Mechanical Engineering at TU Eindhoven. Over the following decade, he worked at the TNO, Smart Robotics, TomTom, Video, in roles ranging from researchers to technical lead and architect. A consistent theme throughout his career has been development of world models that enables autonomous robots to perceive, understand, and operate more effectively in a complex environment. In 2024, he transited to academia, joined the robotics section in TU Eindhoven as assistant professor. So welcome, Jos. Our second speaker is from the commercial side, Michiel Ebbing. Michiel was born and raised in the Netherlands, as you can see, where he studied in the business as a bachelor and the finance in the master at Erasmus University, Rotterdam. Alongside his studies, he earned Mandarin Chinese while living in Beijing, Shanghai, Chengdu, and Chongqing. He started his career at the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China, followed by a role at the Industrial and the Commercial Bank of China. His entrepreneurial drive eventually led him to found his own company, focused on bridging the gap between China and Europe. He became an official partner of Alibaba.com, helping European business tap into the platform's full potential as a global sourcing and trading hub. That same passion for connecting East and West now drives his work at V2 Future. Well, his colleague is also here as well, welcome, where he serves as a key player in bridging the cutting-edge technology to Europe. V2 Future is the official European distributor of Unitree Robotics. It's a very known Chinese brand. A global leader in advanced quadrant robots and humanoid robotics system. Michiel is committed to making the next generation of robotics accessible and actionable for business across Europe. Welcome. So I'll keep it on. So good evening. It's nice to see the full house again. Welcome to the China Cafe Summit and technical theme. The first things I would like to say, the robots are no longer science fiction. So when I was younger, quite some years ago, I was watching the Terminator. I was very impressed, especially the T-1000 melt down and melt up again, and can be changing to any faces of a human being. I thought that was really the classic film. And my oldest boy is also here. He's a teenager, growing up in the Netherlands, and we show it to him and his brother. We thought, wow, what a shocking film. They were like, the animation is not good enough. It's so old-fashioned, and the face is a little weird, the masking, the makeup. But nowadays, the new generation, or we growing up with the newer technologies, we are so used to the robots. Where we are more and more used to robots in our life and in the daily industry exposure. So robots are no longer the science fiction. So today we'll explore, together with everyone here, the important questions. What will be the next generation of robots? What does it mean for us, for industry, for ethics, for society, and for international collaborations? Probably we first start from the video and then we feel brought to us. Probably even some of them you will see maybe in the past. So in Beijing recently, several months ago, probably you saw it on YouTube, on the news, there was a humanoid robots that participated in the half marathon. And if I remember correctly, in the end, he was the brand owner, so it used to be Huawei, they will do the game, not Unitree. A lot of people are anticipating on the Unitree. So what's, they did it surprisingly well. So if we organize a similar robot or a marathon together with robots here in TU Eindhoven, what do you think? The TU Eindhoven students can win since they are young and healthy, or you think the robots will win in the end?
Well, I'm a runner myself, so I participated a couple of times. I think the answer will be it depends. That's a bit of a boring answer, perhaps, but let me explain. I think the robots were participating. They were not fully autonomous, I think. So there's some of them a bit more than others, and they had their own race, I think. I mean, I remember when I participated in Eindhoven, and you're in the middle of, I don't know, 5,000 people, and you sort of have to push your way around, and I think that is something the robots wouldn't succeed.
Okay.
If you would say, let's make a map, this is how you should run, not too many unexpected events, because there are fences, right? People cannot cross the road. Yeah, the hardware itself, running, that's something they can do. But the autonomy, the versatility to really be able to operate and run that marathon like people do, I think that is hard. Then I think I could probably still win, because they would, within a kilometer, they would maybe be, I don't know, somewhere on the side, because it's just too crowded.
So robot needs to have a very clear route, landscape setting up.
They don't like surprises, right? So I think that's nice with running is that they clear the road, so not too many unexpected things. There's a very clear course. You know, this is how I should run. It's not in a forest with all kinds of things, like we saw the video with the rocks and the water. It's not like that. It's really clear. I think the winner was partially teleoperated.
Yeah.
That makes it, then there is no intelligence needed, it's just run. Then it's still incredible, I think, because 10 years ago, who would have thought that? I mean, I remember when I did my PhD, humanoid robots were always followed by a human that sort of walked behind them, because maybe they fall over, and if they fall, they break. Yeah. Now they run, and if they fall, they stand up and they continue. So it's impressive, I think, for many reasons, but there's also a lot of things that are needed before they really run the way humans do in a bigger crowd with all the expected and unexpected events that could happen.
So you're saying that you're still missing certain autonomy from these robots' acts?
Yes, I think that is basically the commonality between many of these things that we see humanoid or other type of robots do. Yeah. Do it once in a specific setting, or do it anywhere, right? If I look to this video, I could think, so why do we have people in a hospital? Why do we have doctors? But that's because these robots, they're not there, at least not there yet. They can maybe doing things once or demonstrating something once is like an order of magnitude easier than doing it consistently, reliably in all kinds of circumstances.
Yeah, good answer, good answer. Unitree, the people are really rowing for the victory of Unitree. Unfortunately, they did not win this time, but that does not really fade them away. They are still the robots brand at this moment globally. So what do you think? The marathon, robot marathon like this, is that a publicity show, or this is really showing the progress of the robots in a commercial way?
So I happen to be a runner as well, and I happen to have run the Beijing Marathon in 2006 myself, and I have respect for anybody who runs it, robot or human. I think the performance was mostly hardware, the achievement, because for the hardware it was actually an achievement to be able to do what they do, not get overheated, etc. I think when a human does it, it's the hardware, the body actually being able to do it, but also the brain continuing when they are running. And I think that's the most important difference in this example. I do believe it's publicity. I mean, everybody talked about it. Everybody that didn't really look at the robot innovation was talking about it, so it worked. So I think it was a smart way to do it. At the same time, these kinds of events are needed for teams to get budget, invest and innovate. So actually they're very useful in getting the right capital in the right place to focus on specific tasks in a controlled environment so that they can improve that specific application. And I think for that it's very useful. For operating on a human being in a hospital, it's not that useful. And I agree that's also something that's not here yet. But at the same time, everything that's happening now is needed to get to that next step. And I think that's how we have to look at this event as well. It's necessary to have these kinds of moments that we measured the improvement and the innovation. And I mean, the feedback is very telling that now they're actually faster than human beings. So 2 years ago, people would not have believed it. Where are we next year? That's the big question.
That's interesting. You both mentioned the similar term, autonomy of the robots. So what is a real autonomy nowadays, in your view, of a robot's world? Or are they just carefully controlled demonstration in a certain way? Because we do see the remote control as well.
Yeah, I think many of the robots that you see in these kind of videos are not truly autonomous. I mean, of course, we already, I think in the 70s, had robots welding cars in factories, autonomous. But it was very well defined, like millimeter, it was basically following a trajectory with millimeter accuracy. So that's autonomous. I think the more the robot has to think, the harder it gets. So I know of many also companies and researchers trying to automate tasks. And then you see that the more variation you will need to be able to handle as a robot, the harder it gets. But this boundary is shifting, of course, I very much agree. This isn't, no one says this half a marathon is the end. No, it's just one of the points along a trajectory towards more. I think with robot autonomy, there are robots that are autonomous, but then, I mean, I have a vacuum cleaning robot that's autonomous. It's not really a humanoid, it's just a boring small thing, but it's autonomous and it works. Yeah, that's true autonomy, I think, for a robot. But then still you need to first map the environment, and I needed to annotate some things, but I think, yeah, there is some autonomy, but for many of these impressive videos, it's either pre-recorded, or in academia sometimes you see that you try 10 times and then record that the one successful run and you don't show the other 9, or there are all kinds of tricks that people do, so relying on videos is not the most representative way. But I think they are getting more and more autonomous.
Yeah, what define, how do we enable this autonomy? Are they AI, are they behind the scenes, or what enable this autonomy?
Yes, I mean, at least for me, I think the complexity in autonomy is deciding what you should do next, right? You need to do the next right thing. And if I'm a welding robot, then you just reprogram it fully. But if robots need to have more and more autonomy, they need to be able to reason what should be the next thing. And I think there is the key, because in order to have this reasoning, they need to very well understand the environment. I think that is where we are now working on hardly with AI, with all kinds of technologies, to make sure that we have the autonomy. I also think on the hardware side, a lot of things have happened. But for example, if I close my eyes, so basically I turn off vision, I can feel anything. I can drink from this glass of water with closing my eyes. I think many of these robots also are, compared to humans at least, less versatile or less skilled. Also on the sensing side. Also, there are a lot of technologies being developed. But I think that's also something, if I wouldn't be able to feel, then my performance would drop tremendously. So many of the tasks will, I think, need advancements in the reasoning, what should I do next? And for that maybe also a bit of the sensing and understanding this scene, not just with a camera, but in the way that we humans do.
Yeah, clear. What are the biggest misperceptions at this moment on robotics, in your view?
I think our biggest problem is the general perception of where robots are today. We are getting inquiries every day of people wanting to buy unitary robots, consumers, businesses, all of them. And they want to buy one because they don't want to clean up their house anymore, or they want their beds to be made because they saw some video on LinkedIn where a robot is doing that. And I think, The explanation was clear. That's probably one video out of 100 attempts and just 3 seconds so that they could cut it in a way that it looks like it can actually make a bed, but currently it cannot. And for us that's not helpful because 99% of the time I'm talking to people that want to buy a robot for which it's not suitable. So I think education on where the robots are today is absolutely crucial for them, but also for the brands themselves, because they're not going to get positive reviews if these kinds of people buy these robots. But the same applies to businesses, because we get businesses that also think that their entire industrial capacity can be run by robots. And that's not realistic. At the same time, I think it's also important to understand that the majority of tasks in companies, you don't need an autonomous robot for. There's a lot of tasks which you can automate with a much simpler automation, much simpler hardware, which also means there are way less components to break down. Because people underestimate, like a humanoid has so many joints and so many elements, like parts, and every part can be damaged and then needs to be replaced. So the less joints and the less parts you have, the less joints or parts can be damaged. Yeah. So I think you want to find an automation with hardware that's as simple as possible for the specific task at hand. And I think now people, because of humanoids, they think they have some sort of shortcut, that they don't have to think for themselves. They can buy the robot and the robot will figure it out. And we are very, very far from that, and I don't see a point in time where you're reaching that point. So I think the priority is now that every business or every application needs to understand what do we need, and then focus on the specific solution for that application. And it can be autonomous, can be not so autonomous. Just depends on the situation, what solution you need.
Interesting. May disappoint people. Some of those people coming over to say buy a robot from you guys. We have a clean house, and heat work and everything.
Exactly. You hear the stories of salespeople wanting to sell to anybody. We're not that kind of company. Of course, in the long run, it would hurt us as well, because it would get out, and I think the reputation of humanoids in general is at stake. So the future business model is at stake. So if we're going to sell these products to companies that expect something that they're not going to get, I don't think there's a winner there.
Clear.
Last questions?
Shall we ask in the end? Yeah, we'll ask in the end, if possible. I will remember. You both are cross-international for sure, and if we say the people here are having a 50% Chinese origin or Asian origin, 50% Dutch or other European. So Europe and China seems to approach this hot topic robotics in a very different way. Europe focuses on the safety, precision, ethics, regulation, while China moves extremely fast in a large-scale deployment, also thanks to the logistics, the full logistics we have. Is that a fair characterization or description in your view?
Shall I go first now? Okay. I think there's always some sort of truth to these kinds of ways we want to put everything in a box. At the same time, I really believe that this is a joint effort. So I think we can only do it all together. And China needs us, and we need China in that sense. I think China can learn a lot from the regulatory point of view that currently is also facing Europe. I think when it comes to understanding the regulatory framework around a topic like this, Europe is quite advanced and can create boundaries that I think are very necessary. At the same time, in an environment where you want to innovate, I think you also need an environment like China to actually A/B test almost everything endlessly, and eventually then something comes up that is superior to others. And I think China has the perfect competitive landscape to do that type of innovation. which is way more difficult to organize in Europe. So I really believe that the only way forward is to take advantage of the differences, but actually bring them together and then jointly innovate to a superior industry and product. And I think that that's happening in a lot of areas. At the same time, I also feel that there is a dark cloud above it of geopolitical unrest and potential sanctions of whether it's resources or anything else. I think that will become very relevant also for the humanoid industry. How it will develop in terms of geopolitics.
Yeah, well said. Let's go to Shane.
Yeah, I agree with what you say. I mean, I'm in academia, and I meet Chinese people all the time, and I spoke about a similar topic with a Chinese student, and then we kind of thought that this is how it should be. I mean, he's graduating, I was supervising him. We don't really care about nationality, we just care about solving problems. And I think that's done best if you do it together. But I think now with China on one end and the US and then Europe in between, sort of, we're not really collaborating that well. And I think that's, I mean, I'd like to see the brightest future, the quickest progress is with collaboration. And you mentioned the tensions and I think this holds between all the bigger players in the world. So there is a sort of, should you then collaborate? Should you be more sort of self-sustainable? I always hope that we go for collaboration, because I think still many Chinese people come here to study, but then they also go at some point in time to go back to China, and they can use the knowledge, we can learn from their experience, their perspective, they can learn from ours. So I think that would be the quickest way forward. But then there's always the politics and other kind of realisms that may lead to more complicated situations. I think, especially we see it here with ASML and machines and export restrictions. I mean, as a scientist, I don't want to think in export restrictions, but that's a different layer that is very important, I think, in facilitating these kind of things.
Unfortunately, we have to live in a world that's a little bit geopolitics, especially in the domain of semicon, where we are now, in the semicon town. In photonics, well, I'm really surprised with how you brought it up. Even robotics, they start to be under the cloud of geo. So you, as a distributor of a Unitree, of a Chinese brand, have you faced any obstacles or sensitivities or any questions? If you may ponder.
No, in the sense that the businesses that we talk to don't talk about these kinds of issues yet. I think the only thing that comes up is this data security. So I think that's either the second or third question after price when they contact us. How is that secured? Because they are afraid that their data is stored somewhere in China and that then the Chinese government can access it. That's literally, I think, 99% of the times asked by the businesses that we work with. Luckily, we have a very good reply, and we can safeguard their data, that it's not stored in China, etc. So, it's not a hurdle, but it's a concern coming out of the concerns of the customers that also read the media and also see the geopolitical discussion going on. I do believe that regulations that will come more and more now. Humanoids are entering our society more and more. They will define it much more, and I don't know what's to come when it comes to regulation. So we'll see, but I can imagine that there's going to be certain limitations or additional requests on top of standard certifications, which of course all the robots have that are needed to come to Europe.
when we talk about robotics in Europe, do we already have certain regulations we need to follow, like in general CE for import?
CE is there, so some of the models are already deployed in China and not in Europe because they don't have the CE certification.
Mm-hmm.
So normally that's waiting approval, and then once it's approved, they also come here. But we are already half a year or a year behind in deployment. So you already see a delay there. So technically you could say we are working with the old models, and China is already working with new models.
Yeah.
So it's a delaying factor and a result of them coming from China. Of course, I think it wouldn't be a bad thing if there are also humanoids coming from Europe. But again, like I said, I think the innovation environment is just much better in China at the moment for speed of innovation and also the scale of people now involved in humanoids in China. I don't think that can be matched, for sure not in the Netherlands.
Interesting. What do you think are the forces, what are the drives behind this speed of innovation in China?
I mean, I've lived in China a couple of years, and I would say at the heart of any innovation in China is the people. And most Chinese people I've met are very entrepreneurial, very flexible, very agile. So they're used to constantly changing, whether it's their daily schedule or how they use their phone or how they communicate with family. So like their whole life is changing every year. And I think that speed of innovation at the base of everybody's life in China is a very good foundation on which they can build other innovations because they're naturally used to it. And that's something I really had to get used to when I was in China, because in the Netherlands or Europe, hardly anything changes. And when it changes, there's a lot of resistance and a lot of people wanting it to stay the same. So I think that helps a lot. At the same time, there's definitely state coordination that helps as well. It gives clear guidance of where we're going to go, all of us together. Normally there's budget available, there's an end goal in sight. And that helps also in giving the direction people need to know where to innovate, and because they know there's going to be support. So I've seen it happen in the last decades multiple times in different directions, and now it's definitely happening in the humanoid industry. Of course, there's also the manufacturing base of China behind it, with millions of engineers having the basic knowledge and expertise that I don't have to actually work on the hardware. So I think that combination is quite unique. You wouldn't find it in the same numbers for sure, but also in the same quality as you can find it in China, which has led to super efficient supply chains that are also very close to each other. Like if a humanoid company wants to buy a certain bolt or a screw or whatever component they're looking for, it's probably down the road.
Yeah.
Whereas in maybe other places people need to wait 1 or 2 weeks before it's delivered. There it can be delivered within an hour. And that kind of speed on a daily basis also helps the longer term innovation.
Yeah, good insight. To echo what you said, what I read is if you want to try out, you want to develop a beta products with a hardware, and in Shenzhen the normal speed is 1.5 days. So basically you collect all your suppliers almost on the same street, so they know each other as well, so they like A to B, B to C, C to D. So it's quite impressive in a way. So in case you need to develop new products, that could be considered. So many people think the real breakthrough of robotics is AI, not the robotics hardware itself anymore. So technically speaking, what is currently the hardest problem in robotics industry? Is it the perception? Is it the movement? Is it the manipulation? Is it the interaction between the robots and human beings?
I think a bit of everything. Like I said, because it's the enormous variation that you need to deal with that makes it hard. I think, like I said before, the hardware has improved tremendously. Also AI, I think, I mean, we all now are daily users of AI, whereas 5 years ago it was more something for the future. But it's not that you can then take, say, ChatGPT and the fancy hardware and then have a robot that does what it needs to do. I think I'm maybe repeating myself, but the enormous amount of variation. I can pick up this glass here, but I can do it, you can put me anywhere in the world, any table, any glass, and I will pick it up easily. But that variation, being able to handle that is something that's really hard for robots. That's also why these videos, maybe you can make the bed in my bedroom because I trained a robot to do it, but then they go to your place and then they fail. Or then I change from blue to red, and then it doesn't work anymore. So this enormous ability of humans to really understand what's going on, to really decide then I should do it like this or like that, I think that requires a bit of perception that needs to improve, a bit of the reasoning, a bit of the hardware, the sensing. Really the entire pipeline needs to, I think, improve, and it has to work together. And then on top of that, of course, the safety and all of that, because I mean, before I let a robot sort of cut my body, then it really needs to be safe, right?
Exactly.
That you, with ChatGPT I sometimes get weird answers, that's okay. But
Yeah, that's most of my next questions. Like humanoid robots are extremely complex to build. So, I don't know if Michiel, you have a robot at home. Is that feeling safe to have a robot at home to do things for you, to go around human being life? Do we need to take care of certain things?
I think that's a big challenge now. I mean, these robots, they are safe because they're not really autonomous in the sense they will not do much unless you tell them to. So in that sense it's safe. But before you chop your vegetables with a knife, I won't allow a robot in my room doing that, where I also have children and pets, unless I really know it's safe.
Yeah.
And sometimes it reminds me of this automated driving. I mean, I worked in that field for quite a while. I think when I did my PhD around 15 years ago, all the big people in industry said, we're almost there, right? The people at Google, Tesla and so on.
Yeah.
And now we still say we're almost there. But it's 15 years down the road, a lot has happened.
Yeah.
And I think that is also because, at least it was I was told, is that if I drive a car and I run into someone and there is an accident, then people will kind of accept it. I mean, they will be angry, but humans make mistakes. But if it's an automated vehicle, then they will not accept it. So even if you can automate something with human performance, then probably it's not good enough. Still, you need to be even better than human performance, because I will never accept it if a robot does something to my children at home. Even if you would say, but if you would have hired a normal person, then it could have happened as well. Then I said, this is just not acceptable. So I think there is a very high demand for very, very high reliability, and especially with all these AI solutions, explainability, giving guarantees. That's not really the strength of these algorithms.
Yeah, you mentioned very interesting things. The Tesla, the FSD, autonomous driving package, is just approved this year, just I think last month in the Netherlands. I started to see my friends, they start to show in their social media. They put it on. I never put it on. I was also working in autonomous driving projects. Afterwards, no autonomous driving. Because it's not only the hardware and the software, it highly depends on the scenario, on your environment. So when you drive perfectly fine in the Netherlands and you go to Belgium, you go to France, maybe they are not able to recognize the board anymore. The rules change rapidly every day. So all these scenarios make the autonomous driving or these robot cars into a very dangerous way. And if they have the wrong perception or delayed decision for 2 seconds, you could be gone. So that's my very conservative way of looking at this.
And there you have there you have the same problem. I think 99.5% of the time it's already very good for many years, but 99.5% of the time that means that every day, I don't know, thousands of accidents will happen. So that's not acceptable. It needs to be 99 point I don't know how many nines.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's also, I think, why still, even in US, these autonomous vehicles from Waymo and so, yeah, they still rely on the map because they really need to make sure that it works well. They still rely on someone who's remotely being able to intervene. Yeah, that's just because that 80-20 rule, right? The last bits and pieces take so much time, way more time than the first stretch. And I think that's going to be the same with robotics. The higher the risk safety-wise,
Yeah.
the longer it takes. And maybe if you, I don't know, in a greenhouse or to automate some things, or right in somewhat controlled environment, factories where you can say there are right no people allowed here, only people that work, and then I can see it can happen quicker.
Yeah.
But really, say a robot driving around here randomly, that is
Scary.
yeah. Then well, it needs to be really safe, and,
Yeah.
and that needs a lot of also regulation and safety assessment.
It's interesting you mentioned this the use case for the scenarios robots application. So what kind of customers are buying from you? So from which domain are they in application at this moment mostly?
I mean, for sure educational, so universities, but also other education institutions, because they want to experiment. They want to learn by themselves and actually train the next generation of academics to be ready for this wave. And so that's a really big one. I think where there's already an application where the humanoids have value is security. And I'm not, we were discussing earlier that there would be humanoids as bodyguards, probably first for some billionaires in America, but not that type of security, but for example, security of premises. So now there are patrols, and especially at night, there are night patrols of people walking around to see if there's nothing out of the ordinary. That's something humanoids or dogs, quadruped robots, can already do. They have the camera, they have the LiDAR, they have the battery that sustains them to run for a couple of hours or walk for a couple of hours. So that's actually an application where they're already deployed. Where we also see a lot of demand is warehouses and distribution centers. There's actually a shortage of personnel there. Especially at night, because a lot of it happens at night, because we want all-day delivery, etc. But they cannot find the relevant personnel to do so. So it's really becoming a big problem. So this is why they're investing in it. The problem is that some are not that difficult. Of course, it's a fixed environment that doesn't change in location, but the problem is the product. In some supermarkets you have up to 10,000 unique products, and they need to recognize each and every one, but they also need to be able to hold each and every one. And holding a bottle of beer is something completely different than holding a bag of chips.
Yeah.
And we don't realize how much sophistication goes into holding products, like how much pressure, which fingers do you use, like how do you have to move your arm to lift it when it's a certain weight. We do it all automatically, but a humanoid then suddenly you see makes mistakes with everything. So they need to learn for each and every product how to do it. So that's what's happening now. A lot of these supermarkets or specific dedicated companies developing this for supermarkets are every single product. They're making 3D scans, they're wearing gloves with sensors to make the movement to hold a certain product. And the companies investigating this for this specific application, those are also our clients. So we sell to these companies that then sell to the end user of the product. And that's also the idea of Unitary. We build the hardware, but that's already challenging enough, and then we need partners that build it and develop it, program it, so that it's ready for a specific application in a specific environment. And they could never do that by themselves for every application all over the world. So that's why they need partners in every country that are able to do so for those specific applications.
Clear. I see quite some younger people here and the middle-aged as well like me. And so what kind of jobs are most likely to be cut or changed by the introduction of robotics?
By the robots, yeah. Where I see most interest, because we also have contacts with all kinds of companies, most interest I think is in the jobs where they struggle to find people, that's in line with what you say. So working in a warehouse during the night, that's not popular. I mentioned the greenhouse where it's warm and humid and there are no Dutch people working there. So these kind of jobs I think are the first ones to automate, I think, with robotics, because there's this business model. I also see in hospitals a lot of time is spent in transporting goods, for example. So I know companies are working on that. The nurse is spending, I don't know, 20% of her time just walking from A to B, getting pills there. I think that is where I see automation happen first. And then humanoids look like humans, but what we typically don't want, I think, is to replace humans if it's about interaction. So if you're in a hospital, you want to talk to someone who actually is human and feels with you. You don't really care too much about maybe a robot bringing some stuff, but also taking care of elderly or children. That's, I think, where you still would like to have this human connection. I mean, it's different talking to a human or a robot. So I think where it's economically feasible, because we cannot find people, and also robots will be there where it's unpleasant or unsafe to work with, cleaning, I don't know, in oil vessels or all kinds of things that are hard to reach for humans, right? So if you have to inspect windmills, the blades, that's quite hard. So I think that's where you should have.
Clean the toilet.
Yeah, maybe that's a nice one. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think just to add to his point is that even in nursing, I agree that in most cases the human contact is very important. At the same time, I've seen my grandmother who was physically getting really old, where mentally she was completely fine, but she couldn't wash herself anymore. And that was the hardest part for her, that she had to be washed by another human being. She was so ashamed. She would have paid a lot of money for a robot to wash her instead of a human. So I think there's human contact that actually people want a robot to do.
Yeah.
And I think we will identify the specific scenarios and applications that have the highest urgency, and probably money is one of the drivers of the urgency, and those will be the applications that will come first. I think that's the logic of money, because that's where the buyers for Unitree will come and will invest in actually making it market ready, and that will serve as a pioneer for all the other applications to follow. But so I believe that urgency is defined by money, but also urgency of the actual task at hand. And I think a very good example of that is also tasks that are damaging to the human body to operate. And we are working together with a hospital to replace humans by robots for specific scans, because these people that performing the scans, 20 years in their profession, and they start to have all sorts of physical damages that come up, and they fall out and at a certain point cannot work anymore because they were doing their job.
Right.
And I think everybody in their industry has already sort of identified these problems, and now they're linking it to the humanoid development. And so I think it will also be driven by them, and the companies need the feedback. So that's also our role. We constantly give the feedback that we get from the market here, like where is the need and where is the business model for a company like Unitree to actually give their products to an application that's needed.
Interesting. So looking, I'm coming to the final question. So So final question. So if you two are both invited in 5 years to come back to the same session to our China Cafe Summit with the topic of robotics and AI, what do you think the audience will see or hear from you that sounds the most futuristic, the most impossible to imagine in this domain?
You mean what is realized in 5 years and where we now think it's not?
It's impossible.
Yeah, I'm afraid that there's a higher chance that it's the other way around. Because, I mean, that's where we started off with the expectations or what people think robots can do today versus what they can actually do, if you talk about autonomy. There's a big gap, so I'm afraid that there will not be too many surprises because we first need to come down in realism. I expect them in the fields where we were just discussing, like the warehouses, transportation, maybe agriculture, some of these things. That's where I expect them, at least in Europe, first in the next 5 years or so.
So they will be slower than the people may anticipate.
I'm afraid yes, because these videos suggest that we are way further than we are. Not because progress is slow, but if people think we are already in the back of the room, but we're still here, then even if we move quick, then. But maybe I don't know if you have another view.
If you maybe different.
I do have another view. I think it's harder to predict what's not possible 5 years from now than what is possible. If I look at the speed of innovation and AI really speeding up the learning curve of humans as well. So I feel that it's becoming harder to predict 5 years ahead than it has ever been. I doubt if I would still physically be traveling here for this event.
Yeah.
So I think that would be my biggest change. That I think robots, AI, in combination with the internet, is actually increasing the demand of human contact again. And that's also what you see, like people are actually in need of having physical contact with people instead of just being behind a computer. So there's a reverse trend in some areas already. At the same time, the question is, where would they want to spend that physical contact? Is that with family, with their children, or in business, or at events, or corporate events, or I've also been involved in a lot of trade shows, for example, and I really believe trade shows are something that are in need of change. So why is everybody flying all over the world to meet? But 95% of the time you're talking to people and you find out after 5 minutes it's not relevant. That seems like a waste of time. So it would be much smarter to have a digital filter, cut out the 95% that's not relevant, and then only meet the 5% that you already know is relevant. So I think we will be much more careful and efficient about who we physically meet. And then of course VNC would be an event I would travel physically to.
Thank you so much. So this is a final question, and thank you both for sharing your insight here from different angles. Thank you so much.
To be honest, my biggest surprise was my first encounter with a humanoid. I had seen them many times in videos, but seeing one in real life doing everything it can already do, it made it go from a piece of hardware to a living organism for me. Like, I actually felt there was life in that object. The dog looked cute when it moved. So that's what I felt. So it's not rational, it's what I feel as a human being. So it feels like there's more than just pieces of metal. So for me that probably was the biggest impact. At the same time, like I've been to a bar which is completely run by robots, and okay, it seems superficial, like what is the relevance, but I think it's just very cool to see, like, it creates an open mind about what's possible. And I think that's what's really needed also here, that people just start thinking and about what can we do with this innovation. And you need to see examples in everyday life to really fuel that inspiration. So I really hope that will follow. I'm actually talking to a guy in Amsterdam that wants to open a bar. So hopefully.
You know that in the Passengers, in the movie.
That's in the plane? Or?
No, it's in a spaceship.
Okay.
Where the bar is being operated by a
Yeah.
robot. He doesn't is too careful about secrets between humans.
Yeah.
Would be fun.
Three.
I have a question which is a little bit the side topic, but I want to ask it. I recently read a book by Ray Kurzweil, and he's a guy who's very famous apparently for long-term being in AI. And he predicts that in a certain time, and this is around 2040, that humans would be able to expand their reasoning and their thinking and whatever by being connected to, let's say, an AI data center or by AI. And is that something you could say something about how realistic that is, or is that outside of your scope?
Yeah, I think what you see in AI now is that they're very good in finding patterns, right? So if you look at ChatGPT, it's basically, it just processes the entire internet in terms of text and tries to find patterns, and then with these patterns and statistical relations, it sort of suggests intelligence that is not there. I think the advantage of the example you give is, as long as it's thinking, we leave out the hardware, then of course there's a lot of compute power and there's a lot of data and finding things and patterns. There I can imagine much is possible, because if you leave out the hardware, then I think it's actually easier if you can really sort of outsource part of my thinking and get more creativity from there. How it also would work, say, the physical connections, I don't know. I know this thing is very hard to predict, especially if it's about the future. So I think that is and especially with these years, right, the 2040. Also, when in university we do robot soccer, then ambition is to beat with an autonomous team of robots the soccer world champion in 2050, for example. Whether we will succeed, I don't know, but that's also one of these. It's meant as sort of this sort of point dot on the horizon. Like that's where we want to go, and that requires a lot of development and hardware and software, and it helps people come together and organize things.
And one side question: would you able, because you're saying it's a lot of variation in picking up a glass, but you could not train robots in AI picking up a glass by needing all kind of tables and.
But that's what's happening.
Oh.
That's what's happening. But what all these AI things are very good at is, say, what they call interpolation, and what they're bad at is extrapolation. So, I mean, that's why, for example, chess works really well already for decades, because they're sort of, you just feed in, it's a very structured game, you feed in way too many games, let it practice, and then it's perfect, and then that's it. It never happens that you say in the middle of a chess game, now I introduce this new piece and the rules change. So, because that wouldn't work. And that's the problem with it. If I would do that, and then at some point it will be very good at picking up this glass, but sometimes you see even in images that they just change 2 pixel values and then all of a sudden the algorithm goes wrong. Because there is just something that is out of the...
But about chess, they do have, like, you sometimes watch a pro match, and then after 12 moves, they already say, this position has never been like this before in professional chess. Just after 12 moves. So it's unprecedented territory.
If you say, that's also why chess is a nice game, if you sort of compute the size of the state space, so the number of different options, that's really like the number of atoms in the universe, right? It's really infinite.
Yeah.
So the solution in chess is not to tell the algorithm in each possible configuration, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
Just let it learn, play, and say whenever you win, you get a positive reward. If you lose, you get a negative
Yeah.
reward.
So knowing what to do in a new situation that they cannot learn from the past, I would call that some form of intelligence.
Yeah, so there's intelligence, but the amount of variation is still,
Yeah, it's controlled.
it's controlled.
Yeah.
So they also tried exactly this approach in automated driving, and then you can really drive a car nicely,
Yeah.
but it's not acceptable.
Yeah.
But most of the time it just works quite
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
But then,
Yeah.
then it's still.
And I feel like for variations, it also depends on which use case you are talking about. So for example, for a humanoid robot, you said picking up the glass, and it means that for them they have to have fingers, 5 fingers, that each finger needs to hold them like close or tight. But if you think about different use case, that they don't have to train them with 5 fingers, but just make the hardware as simple as it can be. These variations is human control, and actually the hardness is already decreased. So I feel like variations is one factor, but the other factor is we have to kind of adopt as much as possible to think in which scenarios, which kind of or shape of robots and humanoid robots might help us for more effective way.
For sure. I think many of these warehouses, robots, not humanoids, they use suction cups, so they sort of like a vacuum and they suck, and because then you can pick this bag, this microphone,
Yeah.
because that's for them that's easier. Of course, you need to have some sort of connection and a vacuum pump or whatever. So for a humanoid, it's maybe not completely, but they do that because that's indeed easier than 5 fingers and then having to do all these fine. So that relates to what you said before. Hardware should be simple.
Yes.
I want to build a little bit on the last conversation before we started this question, where when I was listening to you as an academic, you were less willing to predict the future because of course you have to build in a bit more security. The commercial side is already thinking of different solutions possible. And yet, I also see, are we looking at a European researcher and somebody who works for a Chinese company? Where the Chinese are absolute masters is in very quick applied science. So it's the new science, the development is perhaps in this case also pretty good, but what they're really good at is very quickly find commercial opportunities for limited technological breakthroughs. So they innovate from 1 to 1.1 to 1.2 and have applications for that. So my question ultimately is, do you feel as an academic whether you have a good enough understanding of what is actually being worked on today in China, where these incremental but very highly commercial applications are being developed? And these are the ones that can really make a big change in 5 years' time.
And I think also, that was what I think he gave his answer, it is also some of these great inventions that really changed the world are not really there because we needed them. I remember when I was at high school, we had a mobile phone, and then some people said, I don't need it, right? You can call me at home. And then there was an iPhone, and who cared? All the phones were getting smaller, and they made a big phone with a big screen. And it was not because it was, like a linear extrapolation, like this is what we need. I think the real changes come because people realize maybe we don't even need it, but we do want it. And I think many of these changes that have a lot of impact are not only about are we technically possible to do it, but also we need to have the creative minds. And I'm more of that, say, the boring academic. I'm not that creative mind, I think. But to say, okay, but now I see this technology, right? Now I see these robots in the bar, but then I can creatively think, okay, but that means that I now can do this and this and this. Technically, that's maybe for me more of the same, but then all of a sudden being applied in a specific context, it becomes something that is really innovative. And that will probably, you don't always need to have this most recent state-of-the-art technology. I think you also need creativity, entrepreneurial spirit, and also just being brave.
I give the last question.
Okay, thank you. Okay. When I organized a business trip to China for European firms, they always ask me so many questions. For example, when they want to technology collaboration with China, they worry about IP stolen. When they want to access the Chinese market, and they think about establishing the firms in Hong Kong, in Xinhua, in mainland, because they don't trust the Chinese, mainland system or something. Even ask us a few questions, or if I establish a firm in China, does Communist Party own here or something, And when they want to find the right supplies manufactured in China for the mass production, but they struggle to find a good quality. They worry about the quality of products once they send samples. So I'm just thinking, it seems like it's so much barriers, on the technology collaboration, IP stolen, I mentioned that, on the massive production in China about quality check, on the even just established firms about trust. They don't trust that China is a kind of capital, that's driven, that kind of things. So how can you, I feel there's so much barriers for coordinators like me between China and Europe. So does have any potential solutions and really can reduce this kind of misconceptions, frictions, like I mentioned that IP stolen and quality, they don't trust the quality. Also, they don't trust the Chinese free market, something. Do you have any kind of suggestions or solutions? Or if you don't have a suggestion, what triggers this, makes this kind of misconception or friction so much? It's so hard to claim.
I think there can probably be two quite different answers, because if I think from the academic perspective, everything we do is open. We don't hide things. In academia, you see a trend to things being open, not behind paywalls. If we publish our results, we share them freely. If we write code, we share it freely. That's also partially, I think, why AI can develop so fast, because tools are more and more accessible. And I think anyone in a room with some help of ChatGPT can all of a sudden program a software algorithm to recognize a cat in an image, even if you don't know anything about software, because things are being shared more and more. But that's not commercial. That is academia and so on. So there I see that, all research here in Eindhoven is published. I mean, unless it's with a company and it's confidential, but most of it is published freely, and it doesn't matter if you come from China, from the US, or from Africa, from where. It's just there, and you can read it, and you can reproduce it, and you can work with it. So there, this concern, I think, is less. But I think in companies, but maybe you have something to say about that. There, I can imagine this is completely different. Because I also read the news about. There are even rules about hiring people from China and some company. If you are from this country, you cannot be hired, or if you are. I mean, academia, I think, will try to be open without anyone, but in companies, I think that's where your concerns come from. Could be different. I don't know if you have experience in the
Unfortunately, I have, and mostly about the concerns of the European side. So my opinion is based on my personal experience, of course. I think the majority of opinions in the West are based on non-personal experiences, and I think that's part of the problem. I think there's a couple of hurdles that also hold them back from having their own experience, which is language, the physical barrier, it's quite far away, and the separated internet. So even online, there's not really a lot of direct contact with China. I've been now involved with China for 20 years, and it's one of my biggest concerns. I really hoped when I first went to China in 2006 that it would improve. It looked like it for a little bit, but the last 10 years for sure, it has become worse. The lack of understanding and the limited ability to come in contact with China. And I think there's a mission for all of us to work on that. At least it's a personal mission of mine. I've organized a lot of children camps for Chinese children to come to Europe to study English, but at the same time also meet European kids. We also tried to organize the other way around, but it was less successful because parents thought China was scary. So we tried to bring them together in Europe. So I think it all starts with experience from early on, so that they have their own experience before media or external sources tell them what to think of China. I think that already helps. I also believe in that there are good and bad people everywhere. So there are bad people in China, and unfortunately they dominate the opinion about China. And I have 2 Chinese partners, which I already work with for many years. And there's no Dutch person I trust more than my Chinese partners. And it has nothing to do with where they're from. They're people, they're individuals, and it's irrelevant that they're Chinese to me. And I think there's just not enough people that have that type of relationship with Chinese people. I think it's the responsibility of Chinese people making an effort for Europeans to connect, and the other way around. So it's both our responsibility. I also think that the biggest challenge is not hiding from the negative. So don't try to put the negative story under the carpet. I think that's also something, like especially when it's more government or like higher power based in China, then normally we cannot really talk about the things that go wrong, or which I really struggled with. I worked for a Chinese state bank, and when there was a mistake, I couldn't just explain it to a client because, yeah, loss of face. And it would have actually gained trust from the European counterpart if I could have explained honestly. And that's, I think, the struggle of the 2 cultures, that I feel that sometimes there's not really that big of an issue, but because of the difference of cultures, we're creating the issue. And there's not one side to blame, in my eyes. I've seen both sides. I think it really has to come, the solution from both sides. And unfortunately, you need people that understand both sides, and we don't have enough. So I really always encourage, in every industry, in every niche that I'm in, make sure you get people that understand China. Because I'm more worried about Europeans that understand China than Chinese understanding Europe. But unfortunately, the last years it's not been going in the right direction. The number of students studying Chinese is going down. To me, that's, yeah, I cannot understand it. Unfortunately.
Questions? Hang out with these 2 gentlemen at the bar after this session. Thank you so much again.
So the Brabant Development Agency, some of you may know it already, some may not. But it's a joint effort between the province of North Brabant and the Ministry of Economic Affairs. So through 3 competences, we try to actually promote the region of Brabant and the businesses within it. So we do this through innovation, investing, and internationalization. So I'm part of the internationalization team. I normally have no involvement with China. I'm actually responsible for the Nordics and the United Kingdom. But my colleague Jan Maas wasn't able to be here today. Some of you may know him. But he is organizing a fact-finding trip. That's the next slide. From the 11th to 16th of October. And I think that would be a great place to continue this discussion and see what the current state of humanoids is. So there will be a QR code shared later on, I think in the report, where you have a direct contact to apply if you're interested or get more information, as well as the contact information here. That's from my colleague Jan. So yeah, feel free to reach out to him. He will be very happy to see if the company would be a right fit and to tell you more about the program.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Daniel, for giving us also a little preview on this trip. I think maybe some of you are interested to join, because I totally agree with the speakers that you have to see China with your own eyes. I think many of you have seen it, but if you have not and you're in the business, join this great thing. Well, I wanted to thank the speakers. I had some questions still, but I will ask you in the bar because there were too many questions. But I hope you all enjoyed it. I did very much. And now Frans is coming with the presents, and we have wine for Jos, and we have wine for Michiel. Thank you so much again, and also for you, Cindy. Your flowers. And maybe the last thing I want to say to you is the next slide. I don't know if I can do this. What is the next slide? Because I just wanted to close off with two events we'll have in Brabant. The first one is next week on the 26th, on a Tuesday. It's a film. It's I don't know if you have seen it. It's a documentary, and it's called Meer dan Babi Bangma. And we have a series of going. Actually, tonight we're in Leeuwarden, but we have many events. So then Tuesday it's in Eindhoven, and the director is there, Julie Eng, and we have the film translated in Chinese. And the idea is really to discuss with also, first generation, second generation Chinese, with to see this documentary and talk to the director as well. So that's in Eindhoven. If you're a VNC member, it's free. And then we have the 1st of June is a pub quiz in Den Bosch by FC Den Bosch. FC Den Bosch is also, it's a sponsor and it's also owned by a Chinese company, so it's quite interesting. It's the second time we do it, and it's very serious quiz, but it's also a lot of fun. It's many questions. You think you know China, but then it's all very detailed. Yeah.
I didn't bring that fine.
So you can form a team. So maybe it's also nice for the future to come. You can have a team with 4 or 5 people, or maybe for TU Eindhoven. Very welcome to do that, and it's also be a lot of fun. So welcome to our events, and thank you again for coming, and there will be drinks in the bar. Thank you so much.